Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow, the In Pit Lane after party. It's a very after party because In Pit Lane has now finished its first season on Channel 31 for 2022. But I suppose it's good news if you actually enjoy the show and you want to see it's back. Is that we will be back in the end of August, early September for a second series. That's been confirmed by both 31 and RMI TV. Studio's been booked and. Yes, we'll hopefully be ready to go. But we're not going away completely. We'll be doing this every week, and we've also got some other things planned over the break. But joining us as what an incredibly busy time of motorsport it is. I mean, we had last weekend. We had Indianapolis 500, the Monaco Grand Prix, Nürburgring 24 hours just recently as well. We've also, coming up this Sunday, we've got the test day for the Le Mans 24 hour, and then, of course, the greatest race itself coming up the Sunday afterwards. And we'll probably have a bit more on that a little bit later on. But joining me this week on the program, let's have a look at the crew. We've got Pete Johnson, we've got Richard Outram, Dave Stillwell eating ice cream again, probably, and under the weather with the dreaded lurgy is Doc. So Craig Latigo. So welcome to everybody. And first of all, where do we start? Do we start with Monaco?
Actually, I would like to start, please. Given that today is the second day of winter and the last episode of In Pit Lane was filmed on the 31st of May, the last day of autumn, does that mean that now is the winter of our D content?
Oh, there you go. How long have you been playing with that? That's been in the gut.
I've been working on that one for a good 2 or 3 minutes, guys.
Oh, and it shows. It shows. You can see every second is counted. Yes. Well, okay.
I was nerdy.
So, So let's talk about Monaco. First, before we do that, let's go and just welcome a couple of our regulars along. We've got David Howard is joining us today. Good evening to David as well, and Michael is with us as well. Michael Halsell. Good day, Michael. I'm glad to hear that we'll be back in August. Yes, thank you for that, and thank you to everybody who also Channel 31. We finished in the top 10 of we're number 8 in the most popular shows on Channel 31. Which for a motorsport show with a very small budget, I think is I'm pretty happy about that. And yes, Box, g'day Box, how are you? And thanks to Virtual R for his sponsorship. Yeah, as we said on Tuesday night, we would not have been able to have come back at all without Online Invent and Roy's support for the program. So thank you very much to Roy and Online Invent for all their support, because yes, it got us back on air when otherwise that wouldn't have happened at all. So that's great. Also, Tony P, good evening to Tony, and also Brad Gordon is joining us as well, saying hey team. So hi everybody, and thanks for joining us. So okay, well we've talked probably too much about Formula One in the last few weeks, and also the topic on everybody's lips is probably one Daniel Ricciardo, but he's looking more and more shaky as if you talk to anybody. Although there has been some comments coming out over the past few days from people apparently within McLaren, saying that look, everybody's jumping the gun a bit. There's no threat at this stage to Daniel. Yes, we would obviously we'd like to see him performing better and being a bit closer to Lando, but it's not as if he's sticking it into the wall every 5 minutes, or he's not wildly off the pace. So I don't know. I don't think we've caught up with you, Dave, about what's your situation. Is Daniel in trouble?
I think putting me on the spot there with the big close-up, I think it would be, this is, I guess, a symptom of the 24-hour news cycle. The guy who's won multiple Grand Prix before is being outperformed by his teammate. Yes, but that's a teammate who's also been ingrained in the McLaren organisation. I believe this is now his 4th season, as opposed to Daniel's only in his 2nd. Lando did quite well before the changeover of the previous cars. He's more entrenched with the team. And as we've seen, when there has been major technical changes, particularly this season, there are some drivers that simply struggle with the changes. If we consider, the end to Sebastian Vettel's reign as world number one after the 2010 through 2013 World Championships, big overhaul of the technical regulations of the cars for 2014, and then Daniel replaced Mark Webber, and then suddenly Sebastian was no longer the golden child. So I think it's all a little bit premature to be discussing this. Regardless of what the outcome is, I'm sure Daniel will have many, many more years to contribute to the motorsport environment. And if not the motorsport environment, then one of the other, many other business ventures that he's involved in now. So
the interesting thing, as you say, is if you have a look at sort of the change in regulations, you've got a couple of teams where the younger driver has actually done better. I mean, you've got Daniel being outpaced by Lando at McLaren, but you've also got Lewis Hamilton being outpaced by George Russell at Mercedes. So it seems that some of these younger drivers have adapted quicker to the changes in the cars than perhaps some of the older drivers have.
Yeah. Again, George is only just now realising what it's like to have a good car underneath him. With no disrespect to the Williams organisation, they haven't produced a front-running car for 15 to 20 years now. Whereas the Mercedes organisation was at the top of the tree, and for whatever reason, the concept they determined as far as their chassis construction was a bit different. But in all due respect to all the other motorsport content we've got to get through in this hour, I think the sooner we move off Formula One and onto some other motorsport, of which there was legion in the last 7 days, the better. So Monaco, it got wet. Ferrari stumbled on the strategy again. The Automobile Club in Monaco really needs to hand over the TV production rights to the media. And the FIA and Formula One and Liberty Media need to work on communicating to people what the problem is. Because if there is a problem with power outage and race control, say that. Don't say, we're not going to start racing because there's a little bit of a sprinkle. It's like you either have wet tyres and you race in the rain, or you don't.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, they didn't say anything about the power situation. It was just everyone said, there was lots of criticism because, like they said, I mean, coming even from some of the drivers. Now, Sebastian Vettel has come out and he's been one of the people who supported the idea not to start on wet, simply by saying, look, he said a few years ago it wouldn't have been a problem. He said, but he said now it's a particular problem, particularly this year. He said because as we've got in the bottom of the run through at the bottom of the ticker at the bottom of the screen at the moment, he's described Pirelli's wets at the moment as completely useless. So he wasn't really happy to be starting, but it turns out it wasn't that anyway. Turns out that apparently it was a power problem.
I think that's a consequence of the changing of the guard in race control, and sort of it's a case of be careful what you wish for, because now it's almost like it's a decision by committee, because apparently there was also a bit of a difference of opinion as to what to do. So I think it's become a lot of decisions are being made by committee sort of situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's certainly plenty of experience there. I know Eduardo Freitas is very, very highly respected. I mean, I know that Dave knows of his work well. I mean, his work in the World Endurance Championship and the European Le Mans Series and the like is sort of legendary. He's become a popular part of that series in his own right, and he's very firm and he's very decisive. Whereas people said that there was a lack of decision and a bit of indecision going on over the course of the weekend. Interesting to see that at the FIA level that Peter Bayer, sort of from one of the people in charge of Formula One through the FIA, has now resigned. I haven't heard the exact reasons, but he's sort of disappeared and he's been replaced. So there is a bit of turmoil behind the scenes in terms of administration in Formula One. But as Dave was saying, that the coverage it always has been. The coverage from Monaco has always been terrible, and they hang on like that's part of the deal that will have to be renegotiated, by Liberty Media with Monaco, is if they're going to keep this race, and that's apparently now not the guarantee it once was. If they're going to keep this race, which I think they probably will, one of the non-negotiables should be turn over the television production to F1 TV so we can get a proper coverage, because that was utterly appalling, particularly on the Friday. I mean, the coverage of the first practice session was laughable.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's been a lot of noise about Monaco. The circuit was outgrown by the cars in the 1960s. There's no scope to improve the safety of the track. There's no scope really, because you're confined by the constraints of, the streets in the Principality. It's occupied a legacy position because it's Monaco and it's the big thing. But in an advent where the calendar for Formula One is getting more and more congested as the years go on, it's become something of a sore point, particularly for the team owners who derive a revenue from the sport, and for Liberty Media going, all the other venues that we go to spend big money to invest in the facility. They pay a rights fee to get the circuit there, and we get to decide what happens with the television. For whatever reason, Monaco has continued to occupy this privileged position in the calendar, through many series of contract negotiations with the FIA and Formula One management, now Liberty Media. I would observe that at the next time they come to contract talks, there will be a very different deal put in front of the Automobile Club of Monaco, and we'll see what happens when that comes out. Because if there's places like Miami and Azerbaijan and Qatar, even Las Vegas, Formula One going out of their way to create new spectacle races, the question will have to be asked, at what price does Monaco, at what point does Monaco become, it's a great race, but we don't need to have it. I don't want it to be like what was the Tony Cochrane comment at the end of during the two Bathurst 1000 wars in the late 90s, there are no sacred sites.
Yes.
For years we would have considered that, the French Grand Prix, the birthplace of motor racing, well, that disappeared off the calendar for years. We had no United States Grand Prix for a number of years. There's been years where we've missed out on a German Grand Prix because the Nürburgring has not been able to hold the event. So all I'd say is if you were a betting person, I wouldn't bet on the ACM retaining the television rights in the near future, nor would I expect them to get off license fee free or without substantial changes to the circuit environment.
Yeah, you certainly hope so. And the thing is, Formula One's in rude health at the moment in terms of people wanting Grands Prix. I mean, we heard just recently that the city of New York actually offered a large slab of land on the outskirts of the city to say to basically say, look, if somebody will, if you guys want a Grand Prix in New York, we'll give you the land. I mean, if you'll have to build the facilities though, or somebody will have to build the facilities. It doesn't cost taxpayers anything, but we want a Formula One Grand Prix, and that was
no disrespect to the proud people of the state and city of New York, but that would be akin to hosting the Melbourne Grand Prix at Avalon. It would be almost city adjacent, but it's not in the same league. Shall we talk about the race for a bit?
Well, I mean, it wasn't the most exciting. It wasn't the most exciting. What made it interesting was the result. I mean, it was the battle of the number twos, and I think that Carlos Sainz should be on Sergio Perez's Christmas list, because obviously the fact that Sainz was in second position meant that Red Bull couldn't say, move aside, Carlos. Max is faster than you. They had to leave him there, and they couldn't force any team orders on him. So he came through for a well-deserved win, and Carlos Sainz came up for second. So, good result.
You have to feel for Charles Leclerc, though.
Absolutely.
That did nothing wrong, qualified on pole, had speed, and then for whatever reason, the tactical decisions made with due respect to the weather and the evolving situation with which tyre was best. The first Monegasque Grand Prix he's been able to, very much so, Steve. Good thing I don't race an under 2 litre production car. I couldn't afford all the extra success ballast. But to have his first Grand Prix finish cruelled effectively by tactical decisions, I think Charles will be very hungry for there to be more Monaco Grand Prix, because he will want to win some more Grand Prix.
It's a bit like sort of the Dan Ricciardo and Mark Webber at Albert Park. It's the pressure is obviously on him, and he's had so much bad luck over the years. I mean, he would be desperate to win, and this was obviously he's had a couple of years where he was in a really good position in terms of his performance in qualifying, and for just one reason or another, it just hasn't worked out for him. So. That's a bit the shame. So, thinking of the Daniel Ricciardo thing, I think that what Ripien GT is saying here, that Gasly most likely to go to McLaren now, his chances of a Red Bull drive have gone bust. Yeah, straight after the Grand Prix. I mean, Red Bull did announce that they have re-signed Sergio to a longer-term deal. So there was some talk that that Gasly would step up, or possibly step up into that seat. That's not going to happen now. So you would think that he's going to be in the terms of the drivers' market. You would think he would be pretty high up there if he did go to McLaren. If you had a situation where Gasly went to McLaren. Even I don't know. I don't think he's exactly burnt bridges at Red Bull. I mean, would it be possible that that Daniel could end up back at AlphaTauri or AlphaTauri?
I wouldn't expect Daniel to go back to the Red Bull Junior team. I'd say that would not be. In fact, the only time we've ever seen that happen has been Daniel Kvyat. From memory.
Yeah, they were shuffling around for a while because they had a lack of talent coming through, which is unbelievable. But it's not like who's ever contracted to somebody else. So as you said, Kvyat was in the mix, and there was 2 or 3 of them, and they had to, and it all came down to a lot of politics going on behind the scenes on that one. So yeah, you're right. Still, it's not going to happen because if they want to stick to their philosophy, that's where their proving ground is for the top team. They're not going to do it. So. They usually give them 2 or 3 years until they prove that they're worth big bucks, or they've proven their talent, and then they have to just sit on their hands until they get a spot, which is not going to happen with Verstappen and Sergio. Obviously, just been re-signed, and Sergio hasn't put a foot wrong. So, it's a bit of a stalemate again. But what do they do? Do 2-3 years, or just have them sit there? You won't have Daniel go back through the system again. No way. He'll end up. Unfortunately, he might end up with a third rung team like Sebastian's been working with, and unfortunately he'll just drift away from the sport.
Well, it was a big day at Monaco, and then a little bit later on in the morning, our time, was the Indianapolis 500. And once again, I was very relieved to wake up in the morning and find out that nobody had been badly injured or anything there, but there were a few people hit the wall. One of them was, of course, Scott McLaughlin. He hit the wall fairly hard, thankfully without any major incidents, but that put him injury. But that certainly put him out of the running for the race, and it came through for a win for Marcus Ericsson. And it's interesting bringing the two together. When asked about his response to Marcus winning the Indy 500, Max Verstappen said, well, good luck to him, but I have absolutely zero interest in running that race. He said, I'm not risking my life for it. So I don't think we're going to see Max Verstappen running the Indy 500 somehow.
Yeah, what a race. And again, great decision by the event officials to red flag the race towards the end to clean up the crash, to basically give them a bit like a NASCAR race, a green-white checkered finish, so they could get the race finished under green. Kudos to Marcus Ericsson. I actually met Marcus in Sweden at an event put on by Castrol for Volvo back in 2018. So met him there. He wasn't allowed to compete in the go-kart race, that all of us were teamed up in, but he definitely put in an appearance and was very Swedish. Here we go. Here's a win for the pay drivers. It's been joked about that the only reason he's in the Indy series is because he brings a substantial financial package. Of course, his car's in the livery of Husky Chocolate, one of the Swedish confectioners, and that's for people who don't understand, that's how the game is played. You can be the best driver in the world, but unless you are marketable to a team's existing sponsors or other ones, or you bring a commercial package with you, the race car ain't running any of the engines or the motors down the track. So kudos to him. Commiserations, of course, to another Kiwi, Scott Dixon. What does Scott have to do to try to win another one? Admittedly, put his hand up. It was all his own fault. He was winning the race on both speed, and we know that he can save fuel. Probably the best fuel economy run driver in Indy. Speeding in pit lane, a couple of mile an hour over on the entry. Too bad. Pit lane penalty, and that's your day done.
Yeah, just hit the line a little hard, a little early. The moment I saw it, I went, I hope he was quick enough to get get onto that limiter and onto the brakes. And clearly he was. Yeah, clearly he wasn't. He was just that little bit too hot. It was just that fraction too late, and it really cost him any chance of winning the race.
It's like any race these days. It doesn't whether it's 24 hours, 12 hours, or 2 minutes. If it's a sprint, it only takes one little mistake, and you're out. Doesn't matter how long the race is. So unfortunately, there's just too many that don't get it wrong on the day, and they still have bad luck if somebody else shunts them. Yes.
Well, one driver who took part, of course, was the winner of last year's race, Pato O'Ward, and boxers saying Ricciardo to swap with Pato O'Ward. I'm not sure. I think the heat's gone out of Pato a bit.
They've just renewed his contract in IndyCar.
In IndyCar, yeah. So I think the heat for Pato to drive in. I think the push is more for Colton Herta now in terms of Americans. The point is, it's very hard to take somebody from. People are saying, we've seen Formula One drivers come into IndyCar and be instantly successful. Why not go surely it could work the other way. I don't think it's quite that. Easy. I think that they've got to have. Really helps if they've got experience. If they wanted a young American driver in Formula One, which Formula One would be. Would certainly help Formula One. I think they've got somebody like Logan Sargent or somebody who's gone through that whole process. He's been racing in Europe for years. He's gone through Formula 3. He's gone into F2. He's not setting the world on fire, but I think
along those lines, Brett, this is just a supporting argument. If they're good enough, I mean, people throw these lines away all the time. If they were really that good and they could swap from IndyCar to a Formula One car, why aren't more of them doing testing? So that just puts that to bed.
Pato did very well in the tests that he had. He did do very well. So there's no doubt about it. I mean, he's capable, but setting fast laps in a test situation and being part of the hustle and bustle and the day-to-day competition and pressure of Formula One over a course of a full season with all of those tracks you've never ever raced on before would be very difficult. But they are very keen to have Colton Herta in there, and I think because of the family connection and and he has raced. He did race, of course, quite a bit in Europe before he went back for IndyCar. So. He might be a chance. It would certainly be good for Formula One. I'm sure Liberty Media would absolutely adore to have an American, a competitive American in Formula One.
Well, it's been a goal for both the current Formula One administration and the previous Formula One administration. There's been efforts on a number of schedules, to try to get American representation. Be it Alex Rossi. Scott Speed back in the middle of the 2000s. Red Bull has been, particularly, aiming to try to get American juniors into the top tier of the sport. And for whatever reason, it's just not able to find, someone that, aligns with all of the objectives of being, you got to be fast, but you've got to be, marketable. You've got to be relatable. You've got to actually celebrate, the good things about America. There are some, high-level American drivers who were on the open wheel ladder that perhaps didn't espouse the best attributes of America in the past. So, but really interesting, to segue from Indy, considering it's at a track owned by the Penske Corporation and it's a series run by the Penske Corporation, the Penske cars were somewhat anonymous during the race. The biggest announcement Penske had was obviously that the series will be transitioning to 100% renewable fuel from next year, which is sort of the series coming full circle back to when, in the days when it was the kart championship and it ran on 100% methanol. Now it's changing back to running on 100% ethanol, in conjunction with the sugarcane growers, the Shell subsidiary in Brazil, obviously the market for ethanol. As we see, a number of top tier series around the world starting to transition towards, either sustainable or fully renewable fuels as part of the technological drive to drive down emissions and keep the sport relevant.
Yeah, so it's obviously Penske have got a very, very long relationship, a very strong relationship with Shell. So it really wasn't a surprise for anybody that Shell got in there and has taken over that running from next year. Speaking of which, what else have we got to talk about at the moment? Not a lot happened. Yeah, but BMW they're going to announce or they're going to show the new LMDH car. I think it's June the 6th. I think it is.
If it's a BMW, wouldn't it be an LMDH?
It might well be. Yes. But they're showing that off. They've put up some pictures, some half revealed pictures of it. Also, today announced that I think on either the same day or the day after, it'll all be done as part of Le Mans. I mean, that's part of the appeal at Le Mans. When you go to Le Mans, the Friday of Le Mans has traditionally been changed a bit in the last year or so, because now they do have racing, they do have on-track action on Fridays now, which they didn't have for a while. And Friday was the big media day where they'd have all of the reveals. The ACO would have in the morning a sort of State of the Union sort of address where they would talk about the state of the sport, the state of the race, what the plans were for the future, and then all of the manufacturers over the course of the day would have various media events to announce different things. So it was a big day of news, and it was a really great day as well. It was lots of fun being able to go to all of the different places and see what was coming up next. It was really added to the experience. Speaking, we were talking about Roy before, and Virtual R from Online Invent, and joining us now. So g'day, Roy. Once again, thank you so much for your support for the show. Really do appreciate it. As I said, we would not have been on air. We got through for the first time in about over 2 years, we got through a whole season in the studio without being shut down or anything like that. So,
and made number 8 by the end of the season too.
Yeah, it was. As we said, that was pretty good to get back in, get into be in the top 10 of their primetime programs. So very much appreciate everybody. Just
a little bit of MotoGP news in the last couple of days, though. Obviously, they were at Magello last weekend. If you were following the two wheels, we didn't get a chance to cover it much last week. We ran out of time, I think, Brett. But Jack's still not faring well. Ended up 15th, unfortunately. But the latest and greatest on the rumours mill this week's working its obviously Dutch way through the channels. Is he's been linked to KTM now, and that's a done deal. So, look, we'll just wait and see. I'm not going to hold my breath. It's changing every week. But the other news, of course, is that Marc Marquez is saying sayonara again to the MotoGP paddock for an indefinite amount of time and getting his 4th operation on his shoulder. So, apparently, and I'm not sure if this is coming from the horse's mouth or just obviously that Dutch windmill going and working overtime again, he is, he's done and dusted. If this 4th operation doesn't work, he might give it away. So let's just find out. I'm sure he'll give it a crack when he settles down again. But Yeah, he seems to. I think he's still got the confidence when he's on his bike, and it didn't match up well with the bike back on it being so having so much time off at the last 2 years. But he obviously wants to be 100% physically on it to be able to provide his best and do himself proud and everybody else that supports him, so including his sponsors and the team. So we wish him all the best, and let's just see what happens there.
Yeah, and Stefan Bradl will replace Marquez once again for the round, which is coming up this weekend as well. So once again, it's a really really busy time of year for international motorsport, but it's a bit quiet at the moment. Everyone's in for the supercars is just sort of preparing for the long journey up to Darwin, and that's going to be a huge meeting again. They're having it's going to be the Indigenous round, which has been really successful in the AFL, and then was sort of once again was appropriated by the National Rugby League. Well, now it's been further appropriated by supercars, and there's some really good looking liveries have already been released coming up.
So Doug Nichols in the AFL. I wonder who that will be their significant elder that they'll be paying homage to in the supercars. I'm just trying to think of any Indigenous races that have been in. Anyone out there?
It's actually probably a good time to note that I've actually been quite impressed that that supercars at every event now as part of the pre-race preparation or fanfare now includes a welcome to country with local elders. Which I think is a really transitional moment for the sport in kind of recognising, the sport's made a lot of, noise about, interacting with, people of colour and Indigenous Australians in the past. But to see that happening at every event now, I think is a really positive step.
I think that's been a bit behind the times. I think that's pretty standard wherever you go and has been for years. I've been involved with a lot of it.
It hasn't been something that they've. It's not something that occurred with any great frequency before COVID. But since then, there's been some changes. Obviously, we've got new management on board at Supercars. But what I find really interesting is that we've gone from having a couple of teams or organisations having Indigenous interaction or Indigenous community participation in the Darwin event periodically. Triple Eight often had Indigenous themed liveries for the top end. Dick Johnson Racing as well. I think particularly given the nature of the community in the Northern Territory. It certainly is the one that stands out as the most appropriate to mark that. A little bit like, the AFL will have that round, or as will the NRL. So certainly it makes sense to do.
The Sir Doug Nichols round over three rounds. So it's just been currently, and they obviously involved Indigenous people within the clubs or organisations, or obviously to their particular area where they've settled to be able to design the jumpers as well too. So. Yeah,
maybe this panel could do with a little bit more diversity. It's looking very monochromatic.
It is. It's looking very, very, very. There's not a lot of teal independents sitting here at the moment.
No. Peter's bedspread's looking a bit teal in the background.
It's a little bit teal, yes. It is. It's a little bit teal. I mean,
I'm actually coming to you live from the federal seat of Kooyong, recently taken over by Dr. Monique Ryan.
Are you guys have you sponsored by Homes Accord? Have you?
Have you noticed anything? Is the air cleaner? Is life is everything sweeter? Did you wake up to the birds singing louder? I mean, what did
honestly,
Josh has gone?
She's been in the job for 10 days now, and it's all good. No. Just relax, folks.
Hey, don't knock at people getting out there. Penny Wong's in her third trip overseas in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
She hit the ground running. Boy, did she hit the ground running.
She took at least 10 hours between getting back from Japan before going to Fiji. I mean, what was she like? All of this reaction around Australia.
Well, she's on her way to Tonga after tonight. So yeah, she's Penny's been out and about, jet setting all over the country.
Absolutely.
Countryside. Anyway.
As has been pointed out by Michael, is an Indigenous team in the Excel.
Thank you, Michael.
In the Excel
Is there
series.
really?
Oh yeah,
I had no
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, that's it's up in the Queensland, isn't it? It's up in the. I think Paul Morris is very heavily involved.
Yeah, it's partnered with the Norwell Motorplex. So it's been highlighted in a lot of stuff from Speed Cafe and also from Motorsport Australia. So there are these initiatives in place to try to engage. Obviously, the women in motorsport. The FIA Girls on or the Motorsport Australia Girls on Track program. Obviously, very prominent. So obviously, the Indigenous angle is obviously another one that's being pursued to try to improve diversity in the sport for the first.
And with that program, it's not just the driver involved. It's a bit like sort of the team, the people involved in the design of the livery, or the people who are running the mechanics and all the rest of it. They're getting as many sort of Indigenous people into that team as possible, and training them up and giving them the opportunity to do stuff with the team. And a lot of the supercar teams have apparently sort of mentored some of those guys and girls as well. They've brought them into the team and helped them out, and had them sort of with them on the weekend. And so yeah, I mean it's all good. You've got to have that diversity. You see people go, oh, it's all tokenism and all the rest. The fact is, if you don't have, you're excluding, in terms of gender, you're excluding more than half of the population. If you're excluding women, you're excluding, if you're excluding any sort of ethnic, for what group, for whatever reason, from Indigenous to Asian people to all the rest of it, the more people you have, the stronger the sport, the stronger the community is.
Can I make a comment about not just women getting in the sport, just getting into the sport in general? The amount of the trouble I had to get my friend to get her race car license was unbelievable. There's no way she would have got on a track for OLT if I hadn't been around the tracks for decades and knew people to call. It was like trying to infiltrate ASIO. I
was going to say infiltrate Russia at the moment. Yeah.
So what specifically was it, Richard? What was the problem?
Okay, yeah. So you ring up Motorsport Australia, and they say, "Yeah, we don't run it anymore. We've outsourced it now, but we have OLTs on such and such a date and such a date." So you try and get hold of these outsourcing companies. They don't run it on those days. They don't do it on at the most of the tracks that you're thinking of. And you can't get hold of them. They're booked up. They're not doing actually track OLTs, and so I ended up literally going round and round in a circle between these outsourcing companies that Motorsport Australia is using and Motorsport Australia. So the only way I could do it was actually to approach the clerk of course, or the secretary of the round, and say, "Hey, well, you're meant to be doing an OLT today. How can we make this happen?" Ah, right. So by talking one-to-one, I was able to get it through. But if I didn't have his personal phone number, I'd have been buggered.
Something that perhaps we should, have a look at while we're on a break and chase that up, because you don't want any barriers at all. I mean, I'm sure it's not a deliberate barrier, but it seems that, in order to, once they've outsourced things, it seems there's a bit of confusion there, and it's perhaps not as easy and not as straightforward as people would like to be able to get into the sport. So it's something we might take a look at.
I'll make another point, Brett. When I went for my OLT not so long ago, just a few years ago, they actually had on the Friday a whole grid for people going for OLT.
Oh yeah.
My friend went round 3 at Phillip Island. I think my friend was the only one going for their OLT at the time. So there was no grid. It was just an observation during practice on Friday.
So there was no, yeah. Well, that's very unusual because certainly that was certainly my experience with OLTs in the past was always that they took you through for the day. Somebody came around with you in the car, to make sure that you were capable, that you knew the lines, you knew the procedure. They sent you out for a couple of practice sessions, and then at the end of the day, they had sort of not a race as such, but they had a grid start. So. So
Nothing.
the
No
You're shaking your
instruction.
head in
No
disgust there,
anything.
Richard.
Sorry.
You were shaking your head in
No,
disgust.
there was
while
nothing.
Brett-
There was no instructions, no anything. I wasn't expecting the clerk of course or the secretary to do that by them for one person. Pretty.
we'll
busy.
just say a question from Box in terms of OLT's observed license test. So that's your test to get your racing license or to get your provisional racing license, and is often held on the Friday before, particularly before state rounds. It's sort of a traditional time when you've had those, and it was always very there's a lecture about procedures, flags, all of that sort of stuff, all that needs to be. I think Dave might know a lot of that's online now, isn't it? All the stuff with flags and all the rest
Just
of
before
that.
you do, guys, I'm going to jump in with a sports score. Cricket is always a big.
Oh yes, New Zealand, New
Yes,
Zealand versus
you've
England.
seen the score too, have you? New
I
Zealand
haven't.
four for 12 after just over 10 overs a few minutes ago. So 4 for 12. They're in a.
Sorry, who's batting?
New Zealand.
England versus New Zealand. New Zealand are 4 for 12 after.
Sorry. Update.
Yep.
You're obviously well behind. Currently
I said a few minutes.
5 for 36.
There you go. Yeah.
Five for 36. I'll give you a better update against the Netherlands versus the West Indies. The Netherlands are 4 for 152 in the 34th over. So there you go. There's our cricket update for
There was
you.
also a game last week that the boys, in fact, I should go to it. It's just above here. They sent to me. Someone, I think it was involved Bangladesh and somebody.
And Sri Lanka.
Did you say they had a record of 6 or 8 ducks? I think it was, but they
What?
scored 300 and something runs anyway. But most of the team scored ducks. There was just 2 players that scored 170 or 150 or something, some astronomical. So
I think the highest score apart from those two was about 8 or something, and then everybody else went out for ducks, and those 2 players got about 150, 170 each or something to make it. It was a bizarre match, bizarre scorecard.
Yes, here it is, 6 ducks innings. So it was Bangladesh, 11 players. Where are we? 348 runs. A high score of one of the players was 175. So 2 of them scored 100s. And so they have got the most amount of ducks, 6 duck innings. And it was 208 more runs than the next best, which was India, which only scored 140, obviously back in 2014. So those 2 players.
Just remind me, how many ducks was it?
6 ducks. That's the record.
Wow, sounds like that team's not all it's quacked up to be.
All ducks, no dinner. There you go. I think you can see it ticking over in Dave's head. You can see it. Well, I've got one. Yeah.
No, above
Okay,
water,
guys,
nice
what
and
does an
serene.
atomic
Below the
duck
water,
say?
paddling furiously.
Come on, what does an atomic duck say?
This week?
Hang on, Richard.
What does an atomic duck say? Quark, quark. Oh, gee, that's bad. Quark. It's a subatomic particle.
Anyway,
Yeah.
good.
Okay, well, I'm glad you.
So on that note, talking about ducks,
but,
let's go to the Nürburgring.
Actually, just on that note, will be good to see they announced the tours this week though for the cricket at the end of the year, and West Indies are coming over. It looks like we're going to have obviously the T20 World Cup, and this will be good cricket later on in the year to keep us busy after we finish up.
And so our Boxing Day test will be South Africa as well, which will be good to see them back. Let's move off. We better move off cricket, or we'll lose everybody else. Yes, Nürburgring, the Green Hell, the Nürburgring 24 hours, and Audi doing very well.
Again, after the I guess the bittersweet moment of not even making it to the podium at the Bathurst 12 hour. it was South Africa's Kelvin van der Linde aboard one of the winning Audis. Not without a potential threat of ending up in the wall earlier in the race. Dries van Thor had a coming together with his brother Lawrence. And I would encourage you to follow Lawrence on Twitter. He put out a tweet earlier today. He said, so for a bit of context, early on in the race, Lawrence and Dries got a little bit too enthusiastic and forgot that they were actually in a 24-hour race and they weren't just racing each other. And it ended up with Lawrence in the wall with the yellow liveried Porsche, looking very secondhand. But then he put out a tweet earlier in the week. He said he owned up to it. He put out a 3-part tweet on Sunday where he really owned up to it, and full credit to him. And then followed it up with a tweet, I think on Tuesday, where he said, "I've just been for a bike ride. My brother came past me in a car, and I'm still alive. I think we're good."
Yes, he sort of pointed out that they were the typical of brothers, sibling rivalry. It was like we've spent our lives sort of competing against each other, whether it was on the football field, wherever it was, sort of trying to one top the other, and we I perhaps lost track of the fact that I was in fact at one of the world's great races, and perhaps got a little crazy on it.
Yeah. Interesting to see, again, a massive race of attrition as per usual. Absolutely virtual. The Dacia Sandero. No, it wasn't Dacia Sandero. It was the Dacia Logan, or as it's called, the Logia, or now it's called the Loganator. Again, this is a race that is open to cars. The top level class is FIA GT3 and now the SRO GT2 cars in the SPX category, right down to the V classes for like the lightly modified production and the SP classes for the sports production. You've got everything from TCR cars. Unfortunately, the Manta Foxtail wasn't able to make it to the race after suffering some severe damage in the qualifying race a few weeks ago. You've got FIA GT4 cars. You've got a host of cup classes. There's classes for BMW M2CS, BMW M240i Racing, Caymans, Opel Astras, TCR cars. But unlike almost every other major endurance race in the world, this is one of the few where there is still a tyre war. And it's interesting you talk about, Sebastian Vettel kind of shaming the Pirelli wets in the Formula One situation. There were an awful lot of cars on a whole bunch of different tyres at the front of the field, and not a whole lot of teams were on Pirellis in the GT battle. There were quite a few runners on Michelin. Of course, we saw the Falcon Porsches back in the action. Falcon using the race basically as a 24-hour laboratory test, and just they want to keep improving their product. But interesting to see so many runners suffering mechanical failures and crash damage. BMW, this was going to be a big round for the all-new BMW M4 GT3. And I think the highest placed car was in about 6th or 7th, one of the BMW junior teams. The single car entry from TF Sport, the Aston Martin Vantage AMR. Boy, that car looked quick at the start of the race, but just couldn't make it to the end. The leading Mercedes, I think, was a lap down on the leaders at the end. But interestingly, compared to other years where often, even though it's held in the height of summer or the German spring, depending upon where Corpus Christi weekend falls, surprisingly, no fog, no red flag in the middle of the night, as we've seen in years past. And they got, I think, within 1 or 2 laps of breaking the all-time distance record for the race. So amazing to see. And again, great coverage, both in the native German language via YouTube and also with the English commentary from the team at Radio Show Limited, again via YouTube or the Radio Show Limited app.
Yeah, it was interesting that at the end of the race as well, that the winning team had a nervous wait of about half an hour before they actually got up and were able to spray the champagne, because there was an investigation into their final pit stop where they managed to sort of just briefly start the engine before the refueling had been. It was only for a second. Somebody's not sure what happened, but somebody's had a bit of a brain fade and just kicked over the driver just kicked over the engine for a second before he was quickly told turn it off, and they managed to get away with it because. They were very worried that they might lose enough time to lose out to that second place Mercedes. But it was a great race again, and we've got another 24-hour race coming up this weekend. Actually, if you can't get enough 24-hour racing, in Japan, that I think it's Fuji, there is a 24-hour race happening, which will be on somewhere on YouTube as well. And then, of course, on Sunday we have the Le Mans Test Day. No actual full live coverage of that in terms of video, but Radio Le Mans, as Dave was mentioning, Radio Le Mans will be there giving full coverage for the test day. And basically, like from Sunday night, I go on to French time because it's a whole week now. I think it's great that they've moved the test day onto they've moved the test day to the Sunday before the race, because now you can make a complete week of it. If you're heading over there, you can go to the test day on the Sunday, then the scrutineering in the town square at the Place de Republique on the Monday. Basically, have Tuesday. Tuesday you can do a bit of sightseeing, and then straight out to the track on Wednesday for the first day of practice, and then qualifying and hyperpole Thursday and Friday before the big race on Saturday. So, and of course the race is. Just quickly on that, while I remember, because I did put it online, Stan Sport will be covering that here in Australia. However, from what I've seen, I haven't got this officially from anybody, but from what I've seen from the guide, it looks like they will just be covering the race. At the moment, in their schedule, there is no mention of any practice sessions, any qualifying or hyperpole as well. If you want to see all of that stuff, the best way of doing it is to go to the FIA WEC website and sign up. It's I did it today. It's about at the moment it's about $14.92 Australian. It's €9.99, and that will get you all of the coverage from Le Mans in the week to come, which is not practice, but certainly qualifying and a hyperpole as well as the race.
Speaking of hype,
yeah, absolutely, really good, really nice investment. I made the investment in the race last year via the FIA WEC app, and boy, it looked fantastic. Great chance to enjoy the race in its current form. Before the massive influx of new competitors next year, and of course, time to enjoy the GTE era while it lasts, while the last of the big banger GT cars is still around before the GT3 formula arrives in 2024.
And a few Australians taking part. You've got Matt Campbell, mate James Allen is there as well. Ryan Briscoe in the second of the Glickenhaus cars in the main category and in the hypercar category. So so there's a few Aussies and then a couple of Kiwis. Shane van Gisbergen is of course racing a Ferrari at Le Mans, so he's in the Pro-Am.
A car he's never driven before at a circuit. He's never driven before.
Never driven before.
So we reckon he'll be on the pace by about halfway through first practice.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah, you would think so.
Just a bit of hype I encourage everyone to look at after I thank my sponsors
amazing.
Panadol and Advil tonight. The AMG 1, obviously, was a little bit more news came out about it during the week, so I encourage everyone to do their research on it that's listening to us on our podcast or tuning in through YouTube tonight or Facebook, etc. 275 units are confirmed now. 3 million, I think, US dollars they were, which converts to about Australian 4.2 million. 3% of are going to be owned by Australian owners. There's going to be 8 vehicles of that hypercar coming to Australia. But look, do your own research on it a little bit more. Except I'll just mention also they're going to be they're going to be on show for the first time, the Goodwill Festival of Speed. So that's on the AMG's 55th birthday celebrations. But have a look at more about yourself. It's hypercar. It's only it's a V6, etc. Hybrid turbo, all that sort of jazz. But
Yeah, okay. So eight in Australia. We got Lindsay Fox would have one of them, surely. I mean, Dave, have you picked up? Yeah,
Sam Shaheen will have. Sorry,
Sam
Shaheen
Shaheen?
will probably have two because Yasser and Sam will want to have one each.
You reckon two at the bend?
His and hers.
One from display and one out in the track.
Yeah. Or no, you got to have a backup.
Yeah.
You got to have a spares car.
Oh,
Why buy one when you can have? Why buy one when you can have two for twice the price?
So there's
Sam's probably gone for a discount if he wanted to anyway, knowing Sam anyway as well. But anywho, yeah, but 8 in Australia. So who's got the other 6? Who's got the other five? I should say then.
And I'm sure they'll all love sitting on them for 25 to 30 years before they're able to register them. Sorry, put them on club permits.
Yes. Well, you imagine that Lindsay's won't have.
Tony Quinn, so maybe one of those is reserved as well.
Yeah, Tony Quinn would probably buy one.
Yeah, he's got a chance. At least he's got somewhere. He's got a few places to give it a bit of a run around if he wants to take it out.
Upsizing or downsizing at the moment, Bowden's? What phase are they going through?
Well, incidentally, if we use it as a segue, before we finish up, we should pay kudos to Tony Quinn and the investment that he's made into Queensland Raceway. They had a visit from Eugene Arocca, David Stewart, and Michael Smith from Motorsport Australia, giving the advice that circuit will be signed off as a level 3 track, so they'll be able to host everything up to supercars. Really looking forward to the continuing development that Tony Quinn puts into that circuit. It's already getting rave reviews from the professional teams that use the space. We know that he's a big fan of making sure that there's plenty of toilets. But massive investment. The biggest investment into that facility since it was built in the late 90s, and certainly the biggest revamp or investment the place has had. Particularly at any point during the previous holders of the lease of the facility. So kudos to Tony Quinn. He's brought that sort of can-do attitude and making it all about the experience that worked for him at Highlands and Hampton Downs in New Zealand. I'm sure it's the same experience that people at the Taupo facility, the Bruce McLaren Motorsport Park, will be getting. But certainly all systems go at Queensland Raceway for the return of high-level Motorsport Australia circuit racing.
As I said somewhere online, Tony, I know of a little place about 25 minutes outside of Melbourne. Yeah, in that direction.
That one, it's the other one.
Yeah, so if you're looking for something to invest in, sort of closer to Melbourne somewhere, we do know a place that could use a bit of a revamp. That would be very nice. Just quickly, local motorsport. We had the what they're calling the Speed Series now took place on the weekend up at Sydney Motorsport Park. First day of competition under lights. Really good field in the TCRs. That was and some great racing too. I mean, they were really banging and crashing and having a lot of fun. So once again, also congratulations to our mate John Bow. Incredible performance. He just keeps on winning and winning and winning. Dominated the weekend. Unfortunately, as Dave Howard is saying there, pity only 8 S5000s entered, and as you can see on the ticker at the bottom, the next round at Darwin is
going upside down at a service station as well too. I think you need to explain that, David.
So the next round at Darwin will in fact be the last round of the S5000. The S5000 series. There was going to be a round at Sandown. They've now cancelled that round. The reason that they've given has been that it was just going to be too long of a break, and that sort of Sandown round was, sort of looking a bit sort of an orphan, after such a long break. I think they really want to reset where they can just, cut it off at the round at Darwin, crown a new Gold Star champion, and then concentrate on trying to get this summer series up and running. They've only announced 2 rounds so far. One will be on the streets of Surfers Paradise, which potentially is fantastic news because we know how good the Indy cars were around there, and also of course up at Bathurst for the Bathurst International as well. So they've got 2 strong races to kick off the series, and I would imagine they're having a chat to the people over in South Australia at the moment, where tenders have gone out for the Adelaide 500.
$21 million to spend.
$21 million from the state government, who are saying that yes, we promised that it would come back, and we are going to make this happen. So that's really good news over there, and that would be fabulous. So that would be a really strong start to that series. If you got
to do over there in South Australia, all that stuff that got cut up last year or 2.
Yeah, well, thankfully a lot of that stuff apparently didn't a bit sold, but apparently quite a lot of it didn't. So there's apparently still some stuff there available that they can go, but they won't have any problems with that. I mean, there's plenty of stuff they can hire and get from other places, and supercars will be up to their neck in that as well. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, S5000 is big, loud, and exciting, and my observation is it needs to be at the big, loud, and exciting events. So, if you want to make it accessible and attractive to people from overseas, you can't run it in the middle of the overseas open wheeler seasons.
Yeah.
We've talked about it on this program before ad nauseum. The success of the Toyota Racing Series, or I guess now the Toyota Gazoo Racing Series in New Zealand. 5 rounds closely packed together in January and February, gets it all over and done within a 4 or 5 week period. To think about having a Gold Coast event in late October, a Bathurst event in November. Maybe something in December. Maybe they can do their Tasmanian, essentially their Longford Revival event as part of the ARG Speed Series, and then finish off maybe in February or in early March on the streets of Newcastle. That's 5 events in
or at Albert Park. I mean, if you add even if you just added Newcastle and Albert Park to that, I mean, sort of that'd still be a pretty good series as well.
Especially around the streets of Newcastle.
5 or 6 events.
Too. I think
5 or 6 events over in about 3
series
or 4
are going to be the go for it, aren't they? Because it's going to be, as you were saying before, Stilly. It's you don't want it out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, don't get me wrong. Phillip Island's a great circuit, and I'm sure all the drivers want to go run an S5000 around it. But street circuits seem to be the go because, as you just said before, Stilly, it's loud. Keep it compact. Keep it close to the action. Keep the people close to the visual of it, and you're probably going to get more of an attraction to it.
Yeah. Or do we go full NASCAR spec and raise the ride height, put them on dirt tires, and run around on some dirt ovals? And the new Sydney Speedway out at Eastern Creek.
Hey, they're having enough trouble running sprint cars at the new Speedway out at Eastern Creek. They're having all sorts of problems with that venue. There's a few teething problems out there at the moment, especially because of the weather that they've had. They've sort of found out that it doesn't like that particular area doesn't like rain all that much. I mean, so they're doing a lot of work to find out that why it actually doesn't drain. So more than about a day of rain and the place turns into a lake. So they've got some problems out there.
If you're going to run S5000 at the Grand Prix, don't run it as the last event after qualifying on a Saturday at dusk, because it's
no, just strap a couple of dolphins to the front wing assembly. There you go. It's got headlights. Job done.
I saw that many years ago at Calder Park. It was on a Brabham at a state round. They ran under lights at a state round, and yes, there was an old Brabham. I think it was a BT18 or something. Did have a couple of those dolphins. Cable tied to the suspension.
Well, then it's not
control
going
arms.
anywhere, is it? If it's cable tied and with race tape, it's not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere.
No, but so long as someone like a grizzled old mechanic like cable tied it and race taped it down and then smacked it and went, that's not going anywhere.
Anyway, yes.
Then you know it's not going anywhere.
My point is that they did this year on the Saturday, and there was a crew that came up to our stand from a team and they were pleading with us to stay for the S5000 race.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. That's the problem with most things that those major events. If they don't schedule it, I mean, the sports sedans up at Winton ran it on the Saturday. Their first race was at about 7:30 or some ridiculous hour of the
The
morning.
alarm clocks.
Yeah, it was crazy. Paul Van Der Eggen is saying there's a couple of V's did the same thing with the at Calder. Yes, that was right. So we actually
Evening knackers. Nice.
so
to
we
hear
actually. Yeah, so we I remember we covered one of those. That was one of the great things about Calder. I mean, we did cover a couple of those twilight state rounds out at Calder. In fact, putting the stuff together for the sports sedan guys just recently. I found some old footage from one of those meetings, and it was a great night. And once again, it's such a shame that Calder is in the state on the state that it's problem. Let's have a look. Okay, Virtual R, because they heard a bit of a rumour that on the grapevine with the compacting of the surface at Calder Park didn't work out properly and struggling to fix the soft spots. Yeah, I think that has been a problem out at Calder for quite some time. If you go around the back when we lay our cables out for the live stream for the drags there is actually at the side of the track, just where where they made the modifications, where the circuit joins back on the road course, leads back onto the drag strip, the main straight section. Behind that wall on the infield is actually a pump. There is a large pump there, which pretty much goes all the time to try and get water out from under that from under that area. It's very, very soft there, and I think that is part of the problem that they're having, because they did apparently they resurfaced the drag strip. Apparently it wasn't to the standard that Calder Park and Andra wanted. They resurfaced it yet again. Apparently it was okay, but I believe that things have settled again. So so there's still a few problems out there, and let's keep our fingers crossed that we get some.
Where's the winter to get it fixed again?
Well, that's the problem. It's not the time to be doing that now. At
the moment we've got rain forecast almost every single day.
Yeah, so it's going to be really hard. So if they've got problems, I mean, at least this particular resurface will be able to settle, and they'll be able to perhaps do it again or make some repairs. But certainly it's not up to the standard that they wanted, and certainly not up to the standard Rodney's demanding.
On a brighter note, the ski season's opening early. There you go. That's the segue from that one.
Well, in light of the fact that Neckers are saying
5 portable light towers.
The portable light towers light the corners on the back straight. Yeah, that was they brought in lighting there. I remember that was one of the problems when they had the nationals there for the drag racing nationals. If you remember, one year Channel 9 did it, and they signed and they brought in a lot of external lighting, extra lighting for that. And then the following year, Bob decided that there was nothing wrong with the lights that they had, and they would live. It was more than good enough for SBS. It was more than good enough for everybody else. So it was more than good enough for Channel 9, and Channel 9 just took one look at it and said, no, not doing that, and they pulled the plug on it, and it didn't get covered. So, and I must say, Sydney Motorsport Park, from a television point of view, everyone says that it's fine when you're racing there, but from a television point of view, there are spots at Sydney Motorsport Park where they desperately need more lights, because it's nowhere near bright enough. Yeah, they were as I said, the Musco mobile light towers, and Musco is sort of very famous, like around the world. That's lit up the place really well. Hey, listen, I think that's we better call it quits, guys, because it's we've been going on for more than an hour now, so much to talk about. Now, I'll just give you a warning, there may not be a show next week because the Le Mans 24 Hour is on, because I haven't looked at the schedule yet, but I've got a very nasty feeling that the first practice session will be on about the time that we would normally go to air, and if I've got a choice between watching us and watching the first practice session at Le Mans, I tell you what, we don't stand a chance. So
couldn't we try our hand at live commentating it?
look, it went through my mind. We might talk about that. It's sort of a bit of a, yeah, I don't know, a bit of a watch along.
I actually did that with Lachlan Mansell last year. We actually Instagram live streamed the first hour of the race, or at least talking about the race for the first hour, to of course satisfy all of his thirsty Beauty and the Geek fans on Instagram Live. So we took the time. We did a little live face chat and put it up online, and it was a very enjoyable experience. But it's amazing how much goes on in that first hour of the race, and it'll be the same thing in a practice session. Even though it's a practice session, like even in an hour, you'd be amazed at some of the things the commentators will talk about, some of the things the teams will have to deal with. And if you're trying to break down sports car racing, even an event as well managed as Le Mans, you need at least an hour just to kind of cover the outlines of how sports car racing works.
Yeah, well, I think I was going to do a bit of a preview tonight, and I was preparing sort of the graphics tonight, but there's just so many cars and so much to talk about. I thought, we're not going to get anything else done. But anyway, we might have a bit of a chat about it. We might see if we can set up something. I haven't. Yeah, I mean, it's about the first session. Depends.
Friday the 3rd of June. That's this week. Is administrative checks and scrutineering. Then blah 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 blah. Heading on to Wednesday. So Wednesday, 8th of June, their time, I assume, is 9 to 9:45 as European Series free practice starts. So I'm going to skip through the fun. Thursday the 9th, skip through all the stuff on the Wednesday for practice 2.
So what's on at around 1 o'clock?
So 12 to 12:30 their time on Thursday is the Road to Le Mans qualifying 1.
Yeah, that's the Road to Le Mans. That's one of the support races.
That's the Michelin Le Mans Cup.
Yes.
3 p.m. their time to 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. is the Le Mans 24-hour free practice 3. There you go.
Well, that's 11 o'clock.
So that would be just after. So we might be able to do a preview. If people are in, we might be able to actually do a preview. I'll have more time to put things here. So that is a possibility. We could do a preview before, and we might even hang around and have a bit of a chat about the live.
So what's at 3 o'clock is their time? Is our time?
It's about 11. 11 o'clock.
You've got to add 8 hours to their time, or take 8 hours from our time to get to French summertime.
3 p.m. Yeah. Okay, so their free practice 3s at 3 till 6 at their time.
Yeah, so that's the first. So because they've made it earlier, they've brought it forward because the first practice session in the years we were there always started at 6 o'clock their time, and basically went through into the night. They had basically the first session was I think between 6 and 8. Then there was a 1 hour break, and then they came back and basically ran from 9 through until midnight. That was on the Wednesday night, but now they've added.
Wednesday they run from 2 till 5 for 3 hours for practice 1. Thursday they run for their first qualifying is, as I said, free practice 2. They run for another an hour on an hour between 10:30 and 11:30 that night. So they have one in the afternoon for 3 hours, 2 till 5. Then they have an hour in the evening, just only the 1 hour for free practice 2 on the Wednesday night. Thursday, they have free practice 3s, as I said, between 3 and 6. Friday is obviously the driver's parade. And then Saturday, their warm-up is between 10:30 and 10:45. And then, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, race start.
Yeah, so this year going back to the traditional time, because they did move it, I think about the year we went, the first year we went, they moved it forward because of the World Cup, the World Soccer Cup, the World Football Cup. They moved it forwards to 3 o'clock, and then they left it there for a long time because particularly the English, the Legion, the huge army of English fans who come across, preferred it at 3 o'clock, because if you left the track at 3 o'clock, drove back, you could actually get home by about sort of 1 o'clock in the morning by England and get ferries. You could make the ferries and get back and actually go to work on the Monday, because where we stay up at Alençon, which is about an hour north of Le Mans, after the race you'd go back there and you'd see a whole bunch of English fans who would call in and grab a quick meal at the Buffalo Grill. That was there we had some great times at the Buffalo Grill at Alençon with all of the English fans, having a quick meal before they raced back to Calais to jump on the ferry and get back home. And they could be home. And if you fly, I mean, you could be home by sort of 7:30, 8 o'clock at night over there. So yeah. But anyway, so thank you, Leegi, for coming back. Boy, that'd be a shock to the system, coming back from Thailand and ending up in Melbourne this week. I tell you what, you know about that, that's for sure. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody watching. We'll one way or another, we might catch you next week. We'll decide closer to the event. But until we see you, from all of us here on Full Course Yellow, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next week, everybody. See you later.
Have a great weekend.